Today we're going to be doing a how to pose video on Spawn. Now this is going to be my first ever how to pose video, and I think that I'm going to be starting to do these videos in place of reviews, like regular reviews, because while I haven't done that many regular reviews, I've only done 2. That's what I initially thought I wanted to do on this channel, but now that I've been thinking about it, there are so many people out there doing reviews. I'm not seeing a ton of people that do videos on how to pose 1/12 scale figures, showing people how to pose their action figures and how to get the most out of them. Might be something that people are interested in seeing, and it's also something that I personally want to talk about, as I love posing my figures. I love taking pictures of my figures. I'll leave a link down to my Instagram in the description. But yeah, so I just really love posing my action figures and trying to get the most out of them. And I wanted to talk about this Spawn because, man, dude, he just looks so epic, and I've been having a lot of fun with this figure, and it had me thinking, you know, about this older Mortal Kombat Spawn. This is the blue version. I forget what it was called. That is the version I have. I don't have the red Mortal Kombat version, aside, you know, not this one, the Shadow Spawn, the older one, the original Mortal Kombat Spawn. I don't have that one, but I do have this one, which is, it's the exact same figure, just came with a different accessory and has a different paint job. Before we get into any posing, I do want to talk about the aesthetics of this figure. McFarlane has made some major improvements to this figure, and I bet you could tell just by looking at them here that there are noticeable differences. Obviously, the obvious differences of the color scheme. Obviously, this Spawn's a lot more classic, this Spawn's a lot more modern. But aside from that, I mean, if you really look at just the base of it, right? Because these Spawns share a lot of parts. That being said, there's a lot new going on here as well. The boots down here are the same. They both have the same gauntlet, I believe. It might be slightly different, but it looks like the same, just retooled. The chest is about the same size. The legs look exactly the same, aside from the texture on the older Mortal Kombat Spawn. The capes are the same. They've made a lot of improvements here on proportion, right? So as you can see, this Spawn has much bigger, broader shoulders than this Spawn, and he's got beefier arms and forearms than this Spawn, so he looks more muscular. And because his shoulders are bigger, it makes his chest appear as if it is bigger, even though it's not. They have the same size chest, but this guy looks way scrawny compared to this guy. This guy is kind of making this Spawn look like doo-doo. And this was a good Spawn when it came out. This is still one of Todd's best Spawn figures. You can also see that the little crotch piece, they changed that. This is much better, much more rigid. It holds its shape a lot better, and looks better at the hips. Right? There's a little bit of gappage down there, but it's not too crazy compared to this guy, where these pieces don't even look like they're connected. Like, his legs don't look like they're connected to their crotch when you move the legs out this far. And then you also, the crotch piece is just too big and too loose, so a lot of times you're getting a lot of warping over here. You can see, I don't know, it was this side right here, this side, there we go. You can see right there I've got stress marks because the plastic warped, and it just, this part will like push it in, and it damages the figure, which is really unfortunate. Overall, he just looks stunning. I mean, obviously I love the classic look, love the piercing green eyes there. I decided recently that I was like, you know, I don't really have a preference between classic Spawn and modern Spawn. Actually, that's not true. I actually do have a preference, and it's classic Spawn. I still do like modern Spawn, but I feel that because of the lack of red on like the torso. It does make the cape stand out more, which I know some people do like, but I feel like this Spawn, right, that design for Spawn looks more like a Hell Spawn as compared to like modern Spawn, which I feel like is more like super heroic, which is still cool. Like Spawn looking more like a superhero is still cool, but I feel like this design just looks like he belongs in hell, like he came from hell, like, you know what I mean? And he looks awesome, especially with the chains. I love the chain accessory. It kind of sucks that he doesn't come with a weapon. As you can see here, I did give him a weapon I bought on eBay. It's like, I don't know what it's from, or if it's custom or whatever. I don't think it's custom. It's probably just from another McFarlane figure, but it's got like blood spatter on it. It's pretty cool. But anyway, what I wanted to do a how to pose video. We're probably not going to do much with the axe because it does not come with the figure. That's going to be it for the aesthetic segment. So this guy, he can get out of there. Now, what I want to do is I want to take you through some poses you can get with this guy. This is going to be the first pose right here. And he's kind of like got his axe behind him. He's ready to swing it. And he's got the chains going all around. I didn't really put much thought into the chains here. I just kind of did this quick, but we could maybe kind of move the chains, this chain maybe forward. And yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. So we can have the chains doing something there. Which I think the chains are just awesome on this guy. I wish they had like a wash or something. That's like my biggest gripe with this guy, is that like the silver parts on the chains, like they should really have a wash, because they look kind of plasticky. But it's a small enough part that I feel like it doesn't really affect the overall aesthetic too much, and the rest of him looks really good. And if you can get a weapon for this guy, I'd really recommend it, because he looks way better with a weapon. I feel like I only really like Spawn, right, as like a character from other things, if that makes any sense. So like for me specifically, like I never really got into Spawn too much as a character, but what I did do when I was younger was I played Soul Calibur 2 that had Spawn in it, and that was freaking awesome. In Mortal Kombat 11, obviously, I play as Spawn sometimes. He's really cool in that. But yeah, but mainly just like Soul Calibur 2. And he has the Spawn axe in Soul Calibur 2. And so I really just dig that. So this guy is going to be the first of many that I'm going to be putting on a fighting game shelf. Probably predominantly Mortal Kombat figures. But I want to just have a shelf for my fighting game figures. But anyway, let's get into another pose here. So I'll take out the axe here. The first thing I want to do with this Spawn is let's try and maximize the neutral pose. I just want something simple to throw him on the shelf with. Let's see if we can kind of get a really nice, more neutral as pose. So I feel like general ground rule, right? If you want to kind of spice up the neutral poses, just turning the head. Turning the head in a different direction, right? It's kind of like looking a little bit off to the side and down always kind of works wonders. Like that adds a lot of expression to it, just like that. Let's say he's like, you know, about to face off, like he's ready to face off to somebody, or like, you know, or he's like declaring victory or something, you know, something along those lines. I think if we raise the arm up a little bit, you know, you might have moved something earlier, but you can always go back and you can move it a little bit more. And I think I want to kind of play with his shoulder a little bit, see if I can get that into a better position. Think about the way that things would move naturally, right? Think about how this elbow would bend if it were like a person, right? Because I see a lot of people when they're doing posing, right? Let's say they're posing a leg, and you know, they have like their knees bent like this, and like I get it, you know, you found the balance point, right? And it just happened to be that his leg was bent like this, and it looks decent enough. so it's fine, right? But when you're really looking at this, it's like, why is the knee, this is where his shin should be, so why did you leave the knee here? Like, it doesn't look the worst. It looks better on some figures than others, but you know, it's always just subtle things really make a big difference. Like, that looks a lot better. I think that looks more natural. We've got his arm raised up, right? Like he's declaring victory, right? So that's kind of cool. I like that. Once you have the first arm done, right? You've decided how you want the first arm. It's always the second arm. It's like, oh, now what do I do with this one? You want it to feel like it's got a purpose within the overall composition of your pose. Maybe he's got his arm thrown back a little bit. He's readying up. Maybe he's grabbing onto his chain right here, right? Like he's just readying up. Like he's about to step into battle. Make his stance a little bit wider. Kind of play with that as much as you want. There. See if we can get him to balance, and making sure that our knees, right, are looking natural. Like, we want a natural bend in the knees. We are just trying to spice up the neutral pose right now. We're not trying to deviate too much from it, but we still want to take some, you know, time to make him look cool. All right, there we have it, our second pose. Yeah, he's still pretty neutral, right? He's not doing anything too crazy. I want to move this in, and that's, you know, as you're going, right, as you're looking at things, as you're playing with how you want him to look, you know, there's going to be things you notice. You're like, oh, I can move that a little bit, right? And you really, you know, especially when you're taking pictures, you want to just make sure that everything looks as good as you want it to, you know? It's all about having fun with these figures, right? You know, I don't care how you pose your figure, you know, right? I'm going to tell you how I pose my figure, and I'm going to tell you my thought process behind it. You guys just have fun with it. This video is just kind of here to get the ideas going for you guys. But anyway, let's get into the next pose. But this time we're just gonna kind of bend him down and just play with that, see what looks natural, right? You wanna I would, you know, maybe look at some reference photos if you're not too familiar with you know, anatomy, and just like kind of look at, you know, how things look like when they move. But this time we're gonna have him doing a much, you know, deeper kind of stance here. He's standing really nice. I really like that, right? And you see how I'm just kind of like feeling it out. I'm not really thinking too hard about the exact movements or anything. I'm just kind of playing with it and seeing what, you know, what's working, what's not. What do I think looks good, you know? And what do I want him to do? What is the story behind this pose? What kind of picture do I want to paint with this, right? So these are all the things that you should just keep in mind when you're posing these guys. You know, especially if you want to take action figure photography and you want to share your ideas and your creativity with people through that art form. I think we can all learn from each other a little bit on the creative side of this hobby, and just kind of have some fun. But yeah, as you can see, this is our ready for battle spawn. Yeah, so this is kind of in the similar vein to that previous pose, but this time he's much more ready. He's in a deep stance. Like, if the pose before was him, like, you know, about to get into something, this pose is him readying up to start the fight. So, or maybe within the midst of it, right? So like, oh, I really like that angle. Let's say he's like battling somebody. I have the Mafex Black Suit Spider-Man here. Totally be like in the midst of a fight right now. So yeah, I really like that. Let's move on to another pose. This guy is essentially just the Mortal Kombat 11 spawn. So his articulation is pretty good. As we've seen, you've been able to get him in some good poses. Where it lacks really is the forward movement in the torso is the biggest thing, I think. Because of that, right, it means that we can get him into some pretty low to the ground poses, and that's what I want to go over right now. Is I want to get him into a nice deep crouch. We're gonna use the fist to, you know, as the third point, right? We just kind of want to kind of get his leg up right there. Now his hips, that's the other thing too, is his hips aren't that great, but you know, the diaper's not going to get in the way too much, so that's nice. And don't worry about warping it, because it will go back in place. I just, maybe in the deep crouching poses, low to the ground poses, I would say maybe don't leave him in that pose for a super long period of time. I do think that the diaper piece will unwarp, like once you take him out of the pose eventually, but you just have to leave him out of that pose. But don't take my word for it, all right? Just be careful with your figures. Have fun, be careful. All right, we will have him hold the thing again, just to kind of get the chains moving in more interesting ways. Make sure when you're posing too, like make sure, you know, if you've got his toe on the ground or his foot on the ground, make sure they're flat on the ground, because that really detracts from the look of the pose when they're not. But with that, we have a 3-point stance pose or 3-point crouch, or whatever you want to call it, for this spawn. And wow, he just looks so good in this pose. I mean, like, oh my gosh. And like, this figure has really been exciting me about McFarlane figures and the future of them, you know, because if he can keep releasing things that are this good, then, you know, I think, you know, I might have to start collecting them. This figure has me interested in collecting Mortal Kombat figures, and I have decided that I will be collecting more of them in the future. Maybe not anytime soon, but definitely in the future. They are now on my list, because I need a Scorpion, I need a Sub-Zero, like I want Noob, right? Like I need all the Mortal Kombat characters, Baraka, Shao Kahn, like all those guys. But anyway, but yes, this is what he looks like in this pose, and it does indeed look very good. Now let's go from this pose. Let's see if we can get him to do more of like a Spider-Man crouch. The boot, you're gonna have to work around the boot. Like the boot is kind of awkward. Like it looks badass, right? The boot looks badass aesthetically speaking, but you know, when we're coming in from an articulation standpoint, it's not the best, because it's kind of gets in the way, but you can work around it and do some pretty cool stuff. This pose I actually haven't done before, where this kind of more like Spider-Man-esque crouch with this guy, but oh wow, he can actually do it. I wasn't actually sure if he was going to be able to. This looks fantastic. Wow, I'm definitely going to need to take pictures of him like this. Wow. Alright, now we're gonna move on to the next pose. Okay, so I grabbed a stand so that we can do one or two poses just like on the stand, like flight poses, right? So I want to get this guy into like a Spider-Man 300 cover-esque pose. I think that's the issue that has the cover where he's like this, but from Todd McFarlane with the black suit, that image, you know. But anyway, and sometimes, you know, when you're posing figures, you have issues like this where joints pop out. For this one in particular, that happens sometimes, and you can just kind of pop it back in, and it's fine. So no too big of an issue there. But sometimes when you see, I did it again. Sometimes when you're like trying to push these joints to, you know, kind of their limits and really test what the figure can do, we're trying to just get the most out of that torso there, with the movement on the side, right? Because we're not getting a lot of forward, right? We're getting some back, and we can get some on the side. So we'll take it where we can get it, just really making sure that we're using all of the articulation to its advantage, to our advantage, and not to our detriment. With the McFarlane figures, I find that, you know, a lot of the times these guys are kind of stiff, and sometimes it can be pretty difficult to get them, you know, posed up, and especially something like this Spawn where he's like spiky too, so sometimes when you're trying to pose him, it like pricks you. So, you know, just be careful. Okay, so there he is, on the stand in kind of like that Spider-Man 300 pose. I think that's the comic, with where the Spider-Man's doing something kind of like this. But anyway, please don't flame me in the comments if I'm wrong. I never got too big into comics when I was younger. Like, I did, but it was only like, you know, I lived in the suburbs, so it's like I was getting comics from like Scholastic Book Fair and, you know, places like that. So I didn't really have like a comic book shop anywhere near me. Dude, this guy looks sick in this pose. Like, and now, like, I think the cape, right? It's like the cape isn't going to be able to pose, right? So it looks a little bit odd in certain angles because it's always going to be, you know, just flat like that. But you know, at the right angles, I think you can get some really dope looking stuff out of this guy. So that's awesome. Okay, so those are all the poses that I think I'm gonna do for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it wasn't too long. I really do like this Spawn. I think it's badass. I think McFarlane did a great job on this one, and I've been having so much fun with it. So I'll see you guys next time.